Hello, I'm Teja Gerken with Peghead Nation, and I'm here to talk a little bit about some of Martin's latest guitar strings. For a long time, if you were an acoustic steel string guitar player, you were most likely going to be playing some type of bronze string, either 80-20 bronze or phosphor bronze, and those are still very popular options, and Martin offers them in several different variations. But in the last few years, several string manufacturers, including Martin, have started experimenting with some different options, such as different core wires, different wrap material, including nickel strings, which used to be exclusively for electric guitars, and all kinds of different combinations of these. And it's really resulted in a wide variety of strings that are offered, and as such, Martin has really a lot of variety within their acoustic strings, and I'm here to tell you a little bit about 5 or 6 of them. So the first new Martin strings I want to talk about are the new titanium core strings, which is what I've strung this custom shop Martin OM with here. It's a light gauge set of these titanium core strings. And that's a very interesting new string in that it combines a round titanium core wire with a pure nickel wrap. So it's really a new kind of combination. Nickel strings have been used with electric guitars for a long time, and the main reason that nickel has become popular with those is that they have a good magnetic quality that works well with pickups. But acoustic players have also increasingly discovered nickel wound strings in recent years, and Martin's offered their Monel strings for a while, which are similar. I'm going to come back to those in a bit. But on these strings, the pure nickel wrap is combined with a titanium core wire, which is very strong and very flexible. The flexibility of the titanium core wire leads to a feel that is somewhat different from most guitar strings, in that they are a bit more flexible, a little bit easier to bend, a little bit easier to push down, and of course it also affects the vibration of the string. So it's a unique sound all the way around with these strings. Now, I mentioned that the core wire is round on these strings, which is the way that core wires used to be. And some people feel that a round core wire just has a different tonality than the hexagonal core wire that is used in a lot of contemporary strings. Now, what do I mean by the core wire? The core wire is the solid wire that's in the center of the wound string. So the strings 4th through 6th each have a core wire of a certain gauge that is spun with the winding material, which, as I mentioned in this case, is nickel, pure nickel. So those are all factors that affect the guitar's sound and playability, as well as durability. And Martin has done a lot of experiments with this titanium string, and of course Martin is one of the manufacturers that make their own string. These are not manufactured by somebody for Martin. Martin's done their own R&D on these. If you've only been using bronze strings, these will definitely give you a different tonality. But even if you've started to use some nickel wound strings, I think the feel of these titanium cores is definitely different, and definitely a worthwhile option, and the longevity as well is an attractive part of these titanium strings. So I would definitely give them a shot. So the next type of Martin string I wanted to show you are the retro strings. And Martin's offered these for a little while, and they're called retro because they use a similar kind of nickel alloy winding that you would have found on strings that might have been made in the 1930s. So if you're thinking about golden era guitars, these are the kind of strings that probably would have been used on that, because bronze and phosphor bronze strings came out much later. And a lot of people are finding that they like the tonality of a nickel wound string. A little bit mellower sounding than a phosphor bronze string or even a bronze string. Slightly different feel, especially as you're sliding across, because the windings just feel a little bit different. On these particular strings, it's a Monel winding, which is a solid nickel copper alloy rather than being nickel plated, and that again is similar to the way vintage strings might have been made back in the day. On the core wire, Martin's using a tin plated steel, which again is also more along the lines of what an older string might have been like, therefore the retro label on these strings. Some contemporary players are really liking these. There's a version of this. It's a Lawrence Juber fingerstyle set with a great gauging for playing in Nygaard, with slightly higher gauges for the treble strings and the lowest bass string to accommodate the tuning, and available throughout the range. So a great string option, particularly if you're looking for kind of a warmer, kind of mellower sound than what a lot of contemporary modern bronze strings allow for. Next up, we have Martin's Acoustic SP string, and this is kind of their top-level traditional bronze strings. These are available in either an 80-20 bronze or phosphor bronze. The one I'm holding are the phosphor bronze. It's a high tensile strength core, and whether you prefer the 80-20 or the phosphor bronze, again, comes down to your tonal preference. The phosphor bronze a lot of times has a little bit more warmth, maybe a little bit more dimension in the sound, but the 80-20 bronze it's a little brighter, a little brassier sounding, and I would say it really depends on the guitar that you're using them with, your playing style, but ultimately your preference and your ear, what you like to hear. So these are if you've used Martin phosphor bronze or bronze strings in the past, this is the latest version of the standard Martin bronze strings, the Acoustic SP. Next up, we have the flexible core strings, and this is really a very interesting concept that Martin's been developing. What they're doing with these is they're using a slightly thinner core wire, and as I mentioned before, the core wire is the wire that runs in the center of the wound string, so you can really play with the diameter of those, even though we don't see it on the outside. Now, a thinner core wire would, of course, lead to less tension, and that's exactly what these are. They are an easier string to play because they're lower tension overall. They're easier to bend. They're more flexible, and they use a slightly thicker wrap wire around it to kind of come up with the same overall gauges that you'll be familiar with. But because of the different core wire, you have a completely different feel on these strings. Beginning players love these, but as you can see on this particular package, it says Tommy's Choice, and that refers to the fact that fingerstyle superstar Tommy Emmanuel is also using these strings. So really great strings for anybody looking for a little bit more flexibility and playability on the strings. And there's even a version of these available that uses a silk and phosphor bronze wound, which are extremely easy to play. They're an 11 gauge extra light string, and for guitarists that don't like a lot of tension, like maybe some vintage parlor guitars, as well as beginning players, those would be an excellent choice. Personally, I've also found that I can almost go up a gauge with these to create a similar feel. For example, I tend to use light gauge strings, but I've used a medium set of these before, and it feels maybe a little bit heavier than a standard light gauge set, but definitely easier to play than a standard medium set. And so for certain guitars or playing styles, that's a really interesting experiment to take on sometimes, and I think these flexible core SPs are really a great option for a string to try out. So finally, I have Martin's SP Lifespan strings, and these are treated with a special process that leads to a longer life of the strings. And these are available in 80-20 bronze as well as phosphor bronze, and the tonalities that I was talking about earlier about those two different types of strings, of course, come into place with these. The SP Lifespans are treated in a way that they repel dirt and grime and sweat, and Martin says that they will last 2-3 times longer than a standard string, and they really feel like a non-treated string as well. So definitely worth trying, especially if you're the type of player that kills strings quickly, whether it's because of sweaty hands or if you're playing outside in high temperatures and high humidity. Anyone who's an experienced player has gone through just strings wearing out really fast, and using something like the SP Lifespan will definitely allow you to play longer and get better tone for longer in really any kind of environment. So another great option, particularly if you've already used different Martin strings and you want them to last longer, then these SP Lifespans are a really wonderful option to have. So I hope talking about some of these different Martin string options helps clarify what some of the differences are. And there are even a few more type of strings that Martin offers, and there's some great information on their own website about the differences on these strings. Most of these are available in all the different gauges, so whether you like a light or medium or extra light, you can find those gauges within those strings. And trying different strings is really the easiest way to experiment with some different tonalities with an instrument that you already have, and sometimes finding a great match for a particular instrument can just be a lot of fun to try some different strings that work well for your playing, for your instrument, and your performing situation. So definitely try these different Martin strings. I'm going to play a little bit more on this guitar that has the titanium core strings on it, and I hope you come back here and visit us on Peghead Nation. My name is Teja Gerken.